wasn't very lucid when I first met Srila Prabhupada. And I was at Berry Place by the grace of Shamsundar Prabhu, who I saw on the street. And then Prabhupada was just about to leave for Nairobi. And on the way to the airport with the devotees to see Prabhupada off, I suddenly realized that I might never see this person again, and hadn't really been able to take in who Srila Prabhupada was. So then when he came back some months later from Nairobi, I did write a letter to him because I was so afraid I wouldn't see him again. And he wrote me a beautiful letter back. And so when he came back, then I really could see him more properly. It's funny to look back on, knowing myself the way I do. The Prabhupada was very kind to me, and he said, he thanked me for the letter, because I had written it very, very carefully. I'd written every letter separately, like it was a work of art or something. And Prabhupada commented that it was nicely written and correctly spelled. And he said that showed that I was a very intelligent girl and should use my talent and intelligence in serving Krishna, which now seems such didn't fit with what I thought of myself. But Prabhupada, he just tried to draw something out of everybody, and it was encouraging, and it's still encouraging to think, oh, I hope I can do something for him, And then he went on to say that young boys and girls are often disturbed in mind, but if they just chant Hare Krishna, then the waves of material nature will be overcome. So it was full of really relevant things. Somehow Prabhupada always hit the nail on the head, no matter who you were, and even I hadn't even spoken to him before. My first service was buying flowers for the deities, and it's still my favorite service. And when Prabhupada was coming, I made a banner with flowers on it, hanging outside the building saying, Jai Srila Prabhupada. And he stepped out of the vehicle and he looked up and saw it. And I just felt immediately that loving connection and reciprocation immediately. And I had not, all I'd done was pay my obeisances to him. I still hadn't had any personal association, but it is personal. Even if you're not speaking. I know so many devotees that never met Srila Prabhupada, and they still have an intensely personal relationship. Very small things that stand out in my memory from Bhaktivedanta Manor. We had Gornitai, and sometimes I'd be dressing them and then get a chance to go on the morning walk, or maybe see Prabhupada on his way back from the morning walk. And, we all heard that Prabhupada liked yellow roses. Somehow I found a yellow rose in the garden, and I carried it. I remember carrying it, anything you did for Prabhupada, you became more conscious, so you're carrying that by its stem as if it's a precious jewel, that you're going to give to the most important person you've ever met. And and I went out and I met the walk coming back over the fields in Lechmore Heath, and I gave the rose to Srila Prabhupada. And I remember he was still holding it. I remember seeing how he was holding it all the way back to the manor. And it was so, you felt like he treasured the little thing that you gave to him. Just such a small thing. But the way he carried it also was as if it was something special that you'd given him. And then another thing that was really was a really sensual experience was my first time I had some Mahaprasadam from Srila Prabhupada. And, you know, you don't really have any preconceived ideas about it. You're completely innocent, a blank slate. And then I was given this piece of orange, and it really felt like something very, very special. And it was as if my whole mouth was tingling with this explosive experience of having the Mahaprasadam from Srila Prabhupada. And that was quite something. You know, those first experiences, and then afterwards you can get a little blasé, or you've had Mahaprasadam before, you know, you just kind of want to have the taste of what it was. But that was something else. I guess it's because you're reverential and you know, you just want to have the Maha from Prabhupada's lips. One day his servant wasn't back yet on time from shopping. So because I'd been observing it and I had that desire, I already had that desire. I want to be Prabhupada's body servant in my next life. And I'm looking at the other servants and I'm thinking, I want to do that in my next birth. So Prabhupada rang the bell, but there was no one around. There was the sannyasi room next to Prabhupada's quarters, but there was no one there. So I went in with all the things that I'd seen the servant giving Prabhupada. And I stood there at the back of the room. You know, I wasn't being forward. I was standing there with the garland and the chandan. And Prabhupada indicated I could bring the garland sideboard and put it on him. And then I had the chandan, and I didn't know if it was okay for me to put it on him, but he kind of went like that with his head. So I went forward and I put the chandan on Prabhupada's beautiful forehead. So, you know, they're little things, but they're huge in your spiritual development, because, you know, and again, that experience of being received by Prabhupada and your service being allowed. And of course, so many people have, you know, created so many rules about what's appropriate for ladies to do and not do. But we were his daughters, and he just, you know, we weren't being pushy. We weren't thinking, oh, I'm a woman and I'm going to do it anyway. We just, you know, it was part of the development that to observe what Prabhupada liked and what he wanted. And he allowed it and invited it. At one point, the girls, the unmarried girls, had to leave Bombay, and it wasn't very ceremoniously done. And I was gutted, you know, because I looked after the deities, I dressed the deities, and it was such a difficult thing to have to leave those deities. And we had been told to go to England and collect for the new project, and that in the future there would be an altar where the ladies were serving the deities again. But I was a little skeptical because I was thinking, well, we have to get out now. I don't know what the odds are that we'll be allowed back to serve the deities in the future. So I went to Vrindavan because Srila Prabhupada was there. And when I got there, after a few days, Akshayananda Maharaj was the temple president at the time, and somehow he knew that I could type. And maybe he asked me, and so I got to be his secretary for a very short time. So that meant I got a special room with a tap, which was, in those days in Vrindavan, was something. But then I realized that my room overlooked Prabhupada's quarters, his upstairs quarters where he slept. And somehow, even though I'd had to leave Mumbai, I could still see Prabhupada, unbeknownst to his servants and the men that were serving him and everything. But I could peep out and see Prabhupada at night. And my godsister Vishvadevi, who I'd been in Bombay with, at night we'd put the light off in my room, and we could peep out through the balustrade and we could see Prabhupada. And Prabhupada wasn't very well then, so we could see him, we could see how he was, you know. We could see Tamal Krishna Maharaj going out in the night to see how Prabhupada was. We could see one of his other servants, Upendra Prabhu. We could see them caring for him, but they couldn't see us. But somehow Krishna made that arrangement. And so I learned that it's an affair of the heart. And somehow Krishna makes arrangements for all of us to have that intimacy one way or another. And I suppose it might have been naughty in some people's eyes that Prabhupada was in bed and we were girls. But we weren't just girls, we were his daughters and we cared about him. How would you feel if your father was not well and he would? Of course you'd want to see how he was. So it all became, you can't legislate intimacy, I think is what I learned. Well, Prabhupada was so humorous, which was wonderful, but also his sobriety. When he used to sit down to have his meal, I only served him his breakfast. But he sat down so simply at this little chowki in his bedroom, right against the wall, and just so sober and so honoring, just really demonstrating how you honor prasadam. And not talking to anybody, and just, you know, taking a little of this, taking a little of that. It was like so meditative. And, you know, there's only that one time I think he called me. It was so beautiful to see. I always think Prabhupada was like poetry in motion. Everything he did was just like in the spiritual world, every step's a dance. The way he moved, and he was always demonstrating complete presence to Krishna. Whatever he was doing, everything he did was beautiful, as if it was an act of love. And I think that's really what's impacted me the most. Apart from his absolute mercifulness and kindness and engaging us, but he was like a living example of how it must be to be in the spiritual world. I guess we all have our natures, and you know, just being allowed to go in the deity room, and how Prabhupada gave us that opportunity, you know, to serve the deities, and how it's not just you have to have your Brahmin initiation. And now I hear there's quite a lot of conjecture about, you know, ladies, if they should be Brahmins or do, you know, a lot of things. But to me, it's just another example of Prabhupada. He wasn't putting the emphasis on you being a Brahmin, I don't think. He was giving you an experience. And we learned everything experientially from Prabhupada. He gave you a service so you could engage. It wasn't just about what you did. He engaged you, and you got that sense of what it was like to be a servant of Krishna and to be in the association with Krishna. So in the deity room, it wasn't all about what I did. I dressed the deities. You got to see the most beautiful personality. You got to smell all these, well, you offered beautiful smelling things to Prabhupada. It wasn't that you were smelling them, but you were giving that smell to Krishna. And Prabhupada was giving us that opportunity. And it's important if you have a nature like that you get to dovetail all the beautiful things that you can to the Lord. So that was the experience of being in the deity room and having your Gayatri mantra that Prabhupada gave us. It wasn't a status thing. It wasn't, something about you. It was an opportunity to get a glimpse of the spiritual world and how all the things that Krishna is offered and how to use all your senses and purify them in offering those things to Krishna. And that is just like such an amazing thing Prabhupada did, giving everyone the opportunity to serve the deities and, to be engaged in Krishna consciousness. And it was groundbreaking what Prabhupada did. And he was fearless. He did that for us. He went against all the kind of niyamagraha kind of things. and he just gave us a chance to come into intimacy with Krishna as well as with him. And when I was at a buried place, when we heard that Prabhupada had left the planet, I had just left Vrindavan 6 days previously, and I was hoping to go back again. And then we heard that Prabhupada had left, and I was just on my way to take Krishna's offering to him. And we were trained up to never be familiar with the deity. It was always awe and reverence. And that principle of we serve in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan, not sentimentally. And Prabhupada taught us everything. But that day when I went in the deity room and I heard Rancho singing Yaya Nila Premadana for the very first time for Prabhupada, I just put my head on Nandanishvara's feet and prayed, please, Krishna, please don't let me ever forget Srila Prabhupada. So, it's very intimate what Prabhupada gave us.
Je anilo premadana koruna prachu